And in this literature, he has an actual graph where each word, like anger, all these emotions are associated to our organs. So what we come to find out is that our emotions correlate to each particular organ separately. Now, so essentially what the literature is saying is that plants have a personality and an individuality on each particular leaf. Now, speaking more about these emotions and the emotions of hostility, what we come to find out is hostility cuts out all communication, especially when you deal with plants. They're very sensitive to those things. So when we're dealing with live public experimentation, we'll come to find out that they cannot do any presentation or any experiment if there is a negative hostility in the room. So what happens is that the scientists ask the public to come in a more open-hearted and loving manner to help embrace the positive emotion in the room, thus so we can see the wonderful life of plants. Now, if we do this in a mechanic way, treating them as if they have no life at all, then on the galvanometer, there is no action at all. So what happens is when we put intent into particular things, naturally, there's a certain energy that is increased in that particular thing. So, entertaining a group of psychologists, doctors, and other collegial scholars, if you will, who did not agree with this. They considered this to be a gimmick, plants stick of life, this is ludicrous. And what we come to find out is that what they did was they set the galvanometers in a particular room where these scholarly individuals would engage in conversation and see which particular conversations would cause a reaction in the plants. Now, over an hour or two of conversation, there was no action. So as they speculated, it was a gimmick. But little did they know, as soon as they said something about sex, the galvanometer started switching. So what they come to find out is that actually plants have a deep concern in sexual endeavors as well, to the point that they're speculating that sexual energy, similar to argon, has an energy strong enough that plants are able to pick up on it. All right? Even when we get to liquor, when they experiment with certain liquors and whiskeys and gin with plants, they too get intoxicated, even to the point swayed like a barroom drunkard, passed out and eventually revived with definite signs of a hangover. So we have all these similarities that we see in plants in correlation to humans. Now, even when we get to narcotic vapor or some of these anesthetics that are used in these operations, in order to put us to sleep, in order to ease our pain. When we do the same thing with plants, we tranquilize them, we'll come to find out that even with a huge pine tree, the scientists were able, in order to intoxicate this particular tree, and able to uproot it and place it in another spot, and there was no particular damage as it usually would be if they just uprooted it without giving it that narcotic vapor. Oh, how humans and plants are similar. So we have this individual here, Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose, kind of strong with that term right there, who has done work in the field of plant physiology and began concentrating on how mechanical movements in plants might be similar to animals and humans. And what he come to find out that plants, that there was a respiration without gills or lungs, digestion without a stomach, and movements without a muscle. So just because we cannot perceive these particular things does not mean that there is not a consciousness that is going on. Now, even with touch and human emotion, we come to find out is that the hormone oxytocin is promoted anytime you give a person a hug. Have you ever seen people getting into it? They all hot, they about to bust on each other, I'm gonna knock you out. And as soon as somebody say, give him a hug, they're like, oh, As soon as they embrace the hug, you get this rush of a different feeling. That is the energy that even these plants are picking up on. So we come to find out is that gradually, even when you touch the tip of one of these particular leaves, it promotes the life in that plant. In a plant. So imagine if we began to take these positive notions in our human relationships, we would see a like connection. Now, the individual Bowles, as I introduced you to prior, his research, which was vividly recorded for the public in a British publication called The Nation. What he did in a particular experiment was he attached wires into a carrot through 2 glass tubes full of light substance. And they are like 2 legs whose feet are buried in the flesh of the carrot. Now when the vegetable was pinched with a pair of forceps, there was a certain electrical shudder of a pain that pulls the arm of a very delicate level, which actuates a tiny mirror. So when they say even when you eat your vegetable and your foods, you have to make a connection with that food, because that is a certain amount of consciousness. When you make that relationship with it, you get more benefit and more vitality, vitamins and minerals from that. So in essence, in this Reader Diet presentation, we have to understand is that we can't discriminate in all forms of life, because it's all live and living, and it all precedes these emotions. And once we start putting out positive emotions, we'll see those effects in our lives as well. Alright. Bowles also found that you could retard the growth of a plant by letting somebody touch it, depending on the person. So even when sometimes you're on the bus and you get a bad vibration from somebody, almost mess up your whole day. You gotta literally go over and tell yourself, yo, be cool, relax, so forth. Because people have energy.
You know it.
And this is the proof right here. This is the scientific proof of that. So what we come to find out is that by even merely touching them, and that and others, rough handling, stimulated growth, especially if they were sluggish and morose. And that's another thing. Plants get lazy too. Who would ever thought? Let's go to the next one. So we have acclaimed one of the first botanists, because we understand, the ancient Kemites were very keen and wise in the life of plants. But on record, what we have, according to the literature, the first botanists, to demonstrate that flowering plants have sex and that pollen is necessary for fertilization and seed formation. And the individual who you're looking to your right is German Rudolf Jacob Camerius, a professor of medicine and director of botanical gardens, who also published, is another resource for you, in his De Sexu Plantarum Epistula in 1694. So ladies and gentlemen, we've had this information for some time now. Now, not even just simply organs of digestion and hearing and so forth, but even sexual organs these plants are having. So plants have female organs in the form of a vulva, vagina, uterus, and ovaries, serving precisely the same functions as they do in women, as well as a distinct male organs in the form of a penis, glands, and testes. We got more common in plants than we know. Let's go to the next slide. So what we come to find out is that pollen is actually similar to that of semen, and that pollen performs the same function, almost precisely the same manner, as the semen of animals and men. Plants, the vulva transfers the whole length of the vagina until it enters the ovary and comes in contact with the ovum. Okay? So even when we look at what's going on today, everything is cognizant of what's going on. So we're not alone in this. We're not alone at all. Now, another individual, Luther Burbank, a famous plant breeder, also mentioned that plants have over 20 sensory perceptions. Over 20 sensory perceptions. But because they are different from ours, we cannot recognize them. So they know what you're thinking, they know how you feel, they know it all. And when they have these galvanometers, and you got somebody who walks in the room who's shiesty, that plant says, So we have to come to find out is that people have a vibration. So when you introduce or find somebody new, just be at peace. Meet them, understand that they have a certain energy. It might be positive, it might be negative. Now, more experimentation, because they constantly